A war veteran was led by his 5-year-old disabled daughter into a weather-beaten cabin, and the secret inside left everyone who saw it utterly speechless. The silence of the Montana mountains carried an indescribable weight. It blanketed the entire landscape, smothering every sound, leaving no room to escape from oneself. For Michael, a 45-year-old veteran, that silence had once been the only medicine that got him through the long nights tormented by memories of war. But now it had become a burden, forcing him to remember the most painful loss of his life. He had once known a complete family, a gentle wife, a little girl, a home filled with laughter. All of it shattered on a stormy night 3 years ago when their car veered off a mountain road. In those final seconds, his wife wrapped her arms around their daughter. That embrace saved Lily's life, but claimed the woman he loved most. His little girl survived, but one of her legs did not. From then on, Michael grew withdrawn and quiet. Deep lines etched around his eyes from sleepless nights filled with torment. He carried 2 unrelenting burdens, the memories of bombs that never let him go, and the moment his wife's hand slipped away forever. The old wooden cabin tucked into the pines, the only inheritance from his grandfather, became his final refuge. He chose to live in seclusion, away from people, away from memories. But he still had Lily. At 5 years old, with golden hair tied back with a worn rubber band and eyes as clear as a spring lake, she moved with a steady limp on her plastic prosthetic leg, the hollow clack echoing through the cabin with each step. That sound cut into her father's heart like a blade. Yet unlike him, Lily carried an uncanny innocence. She could giggle over a frayed cloth doll or sit for hours at the window watching snowflakes fall as if they were tiny miracles. For Michael, the cabin was a fortress shielding father and daughter from a chaotic world. For Lily, it was a castle from a fairy tale. By day, she played with wooden dolls on the bearskin rug. By night, she curled against her father's chest, listening to the scattered fairy tales he could still remember. That afternoon, the sky turned a bruised shade of gray-purple clouds rolling in like a herd of beasts. Wind howled through the valley, warning of a storm brewing. Michael shut the shutters tight, tossed another log into the fire, and the flames roared like a beast pushing back the dark. Lily sat nearby, legs swinging, hugging her worn-out doll. "Daddy, will the snow be deeper tomorrow than it was yesterday?" Her voice was soft as the rustle of dry leaves. Michael stroked her head, forcing a rare smile. "Maybe. But don't worry, we're safe in here." Outside, the wind screamed like wild animals. Then suddenly, the snow came no longer gentle flakes, but torrents pouring down like a white waterfall. The cabin shook its boards, creaking. Michael sank into his old armchair, eyes closed, trying to let the storm swallow the gunfire that still thundered in his mind. But then a different sound threaded through the gale. At first it seemed like a branch scraping the door. He tried to ignore it. Then it came again, a hesitant scratching followed by a faint, desperate moan carried off by the wind. Lily clutched his arm, her small hand trembling. "Daddy, did you hear that? Someone's out there." He rose, gripping the iron poker, moving step by step toward the door. Pressing his ear against the wood, he felt it clearly, a fragile presence, a cry for help. There was no mistaking it. He drew a deep breath and unlatched the door. Freezing wind tore through the air, whipping snow into a blinding blur. Right there on the threshold, nearly buried, lay a German shepherd. Its gray and white coat was frozen stiff, its side stained dark with blood. The dog trembled violently, breath shallow, then collapsed like a heavy block of ice. "Oh no, Daddy! It's dying!" Lily cried, dropping her doll. Michael dropped to his knees. The hands that had once pulled comrades back from the brink of death swept quickly across the animal's fur. A deep gash ran along its flank, with raw marks circling its chest and legs, signs of restraints not an accident. His chest burned hot, rage flaring alive. "Easy now. You're safe." His voice rasped from months of solitude. He lifted the dog, surprised by its weight, and carried it inside. Lily dragged the bearskin rug closer to the fire. Michael laid the animal down, letting the flames seep into its blood-stiffened coat. From under the table, he pulled out an old first aid kit. In the flickering firelight, his calloused hands worked with practiced skill, cleaning, wiping, blood-wrapping gauze, stitching one steady suture after another. Each time the needle pierced flesh, the crack of gunfire echoed in his head, bomb craters rising like the war had never ended. The dog stayed unconscious, breathing shallow but steady. Lily crouched beside it, eyes shining with tears, her small hand resting gently on its head. "Don't give up. Daddy's fixing you." Michael shivered. It had been so long since he'd heard hope in his daughter's voice. He tied the final knot, pulled the bandage snug. When the work was done, he slumped into the chair chest, heaving cold sweat trailing down his temple. The cabin now held more than the storm's roar. It held the fragile breath of a new life. Lily leaned her head on his shoulder, a tired smile tugging at her lips. The dog still hadn't opened its eyes, but its chest rose and fell more steadily. That night, Michael did not sleep. He kept watch by the fire eyes on both lives before him, his little girl, the proof of both love and loss, and the strange dog pulled back from the edge of death. Outside, the storm raged on, blanketing the mountains in a shroud of white. But inside the cabin there was fire warmth and an invisible bond just formed. Michael knew the silence he had clung to for years had been broken. Strangely, deep inside, he didn't mind. Instead, a quiet feeling stirred. This dog's arrival was no accident. It carried a message, a new beginning. The first dawn after the storm laid a fragile light across the Montana mountains. Inside the small wooden cabin, the silence was broken by a faint, raspy sound. Michael jolted awake, his whole body stiff after a night slumped in the sagging armchair. His neck felt like wood, his shoulders ached, his back throbbed. Yet his first thought was not of himself, but of the dog lying motionless on the bearskin rug. He turned his head and met a pair of bright amber eyes staring back. The dog was awake. It still lay still, but its gaze was no longer clouded. In those eyes flickered wariness and pride, as if it had never hovered at death's door the night before. Michael rose carefully, avoiding noise. His breath came out hoarse. "Hello there, boy." Lily rubbed her sleepy eyes, tangled hair falling across her cheeks. She crawled forward, her prosthetic leg tapping lightly against the wooden floor. Her eyes lit up at that watchful gaze. "Daddy, he's awake." The dog didn't growl, didn't run. It only tilted its head, ears perked, watching every movement of father and daughter. Then it gave a low rumble deep in its throat, not a warning, but something closer to acceptance. Michael knelt, filled a wooden bowl with melted snow. "Take it slow." The dog pushed up on its front legs, its whole body trembling, then gradually lifted itself off the rug. Its hind legs buckled, but it held its balance, stretched its neck, and took careful sips of water. Lily squealed softly, hugging her doll tight. "He's drinking." When finished, the dog lay back down, panting hard. Michael immediately loosened the bandages. The bleeding had stopped, but as he cleaned the wound, one detail tightened his chest. The edges were too neat, too sharp, not like the ragged tears of a wild animal's claws. Closer inspection revealed deep round bruises encircling both front legs, the marks of restraints. The dog stared straight at him, amber eyes unblinking, as if to say, "I endured. I survived." "Daddy," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "Did someone hurt him?" Michael stroked the thick gray fur, his voice dropping low. "Yes. These aren't nature's wounds. Someone did this." Lily clutched her doll tighter, lips pressed shut. For all her frailty, her heart remained pure. She bent down, placed a gentle kiss on the dog's forehead. "It's all right now. Daddy and I will protect you." The dog's ears flicked, its gaze softened. An invisible bond formed between the three lives. All morning the cabin echoed with the snip of scissors and the rustle of gauze. Michael clipped away blood-matted fur, washed the wound, bandaged it carefully. The dog barely resisted. Each time pain made it twitch, Lily placed her small hand on its back and hummed softly. By noon, with the fire burning steady, Michael cooked a thick soup, dropping in bits of dried meat. He tore off a piece for the dog. It sniffed, then slowly ate, but its eyes never left him, as if reading every thought. In the days that followed, a new rhythm took shape. Each morning, Michael changed the dressings, Lily fetched water, and together they spoke to the dog as though it had always been part of the family. By the third day, it stood firmly on all four legs. On the fourth, it took its first steps, tail wagging weakly. Lily cheered while Michael only nodded, lips pressed tight to hide his joy. From then on, Tom, the name Lily gave him, became their shadow. He followed Michael from hearth to kitchen, his footsteps setting a gentle rhythm on the floorboards. One afternoon, as Michael cleaned his rifle, Tom padded over and rested his great head on Michael's knee. Amber eyes met his eyes, full of absolute loyalty, of unspoken kinship. Michael stroked the thick fur. Tom shivered slightly, then let out a long, contented sigh. For the first time in years, Michael felt the cabin was no longer suffocating. The nightmares came less often, their sharp edges dulled by the steady breath beside the fire. He had a purpose beyond his own survival, to care for a wounded creature, and in return, to receive its steadfast, comforting presence. But as the wounds healed into scars, Tom began to change. More than once, Michael caught him standing before the wide window body, tall ears, taut eyes fixed on the northern woods. From him came low, drawn-out whines, aching, mournful, weighted with a sorrow that bordered on despair. Lily froze, hugging her doll tight. "Daddy." Tom's calling to someone. Michael frowned. "Tom." She nodded eagerly, eyes shining. "Yes, I want to call him Tom." He fell silent for a moment. When he looked back, Tom had turned too, his amber gaze flashing as if accepting the name. In that look, Michael saw the eyes of comrades on the battlefield, a silent command needing no words. "Trust me. Follow me." A ripple of unease rose in his chest. Michael clenched his calloused hand and let out a slow sigh. This dog carried more than wounds of the past. It was pointing toward something in the present, something out there deep in the forest, still unfinished. Days passed. The snow outside the cabin had stopped falling, but inside, the air was far from calm. Tom, the German shepherd who had narrowly escaped death, was now able to stand and stagger a few steps across the room. His wounds still hurt, but the life in him blazed like a fire, fanned back to life. The soldier watched in silence. He saw how Tom often stood pressed against the large window, amber eyes locked on the northern forest. Ears stiff, his whole body taut like a cord pulled to the point of breaking. Lily noticed too. One morning she hobbled toward her father on her prosthetic leg, voice barely above a whisper. "Daddy Tom's looking like that again. He wants to go somewhere." The soldier didn't answer. He laid a hand on her shoulder, and together they followed Tom's gaze. Outside was only a forest buried in white, so still it was almost frightening. Yet in that silence, there seemed to be an invisible call, one only the dog could hear. That afternoon, the first sound came. Not the groan of pain, but a low, trembling moan of sorrow. It weighed the cabin down like a stone. Lily clutched her doll and whispered, "It's like he's crying." The soldier frowned. He had seen eyes like that before, on comrades after battle staring into nothing, their minds drowning in grief. Tom's eyes were the same. But unlike his comrades, this gaze wasn't just lost in the past. It was tugging toward a present mystery still unresolved. He tried to distract the dog, laid down a strip of dried meat, whistled softly. But Tom only glanced, then turned back to the window gaze, unshaken. The next day, the urge grew stronger. Tom paced between the window and the door. Each time he neared the door, he turned back, amber eyes burning, whined, then swung toward the forest again. The pattern repeated, ritual-like. By late afternoon, he sat squarely before the doortail, tapping softly on the wooden floor, his eyes pleading, steady, patient. "What is it, boy?" The soldier crouched, half joking, half serious, though tension had already stirred in his chest. Tom didn't move. He simply stared into his master's eyes. The amber gaze flared the look of command, the look of a comrade in the trench when words failed and only an urgent glance remained. "Trust me. Follow me." Behind him, Lily pleaded, "Daddy." "There's something out there. Tom wants us to go." The soldier turned. Her small eyes sparkled innocent, yet filled with resolve. He was struck silent. This child, one-legged, had a heart far stronger than he had ever realized. That night the cabin glowed in a golden firelight. The wind outside had eased, but within the soldier a storm raged. He sat at the table, staring at an old map, his hand trembling faintly over the forest paths etched in memory. Every muscle in his face was taut. Going meant danger. Staying meant turning his back on Tom's signal. Suddenly, Tom came forward, shoved his cold nose into his hand, then returned to sit firmly before the door. He turned back, eyes imploring. There was no doubt now. This was a direct request. The soldier drew a deep breath. His military instincts screamed, "Trust your guide." He knew on the battlefield his life had been spared many times thanks to the instincts of comrades. Now this dog's eyes carried the same urgency. He rose and opened the wooden cabinet. Hinges groaned in the stillness. Lily jumped to her feet, eyes wide. He pulled out the pack rifle, hunting knife, first aid kit, a few rations, a water flask. His movements were slow, steady, though inside him waves surged. "Daddy, are we really going?" Lily's voice trembled, half eager, half afraid. He knelt to meet her eyes. "Do you want to stay out there? It's cold and dangerous." She was quiet a long while, then shook her head. "I'll go with you. Me and Tom." For a moment he hesitated. The sight of her small prosthetic leg tapping the floor pierced his heart. But he knew leaving her behind would only sow fear. They had to go together, 3 pieces of a puzzle fate had thrown together. He tightened the straps on her prosthetic, bundled her in a thick coat, and wrapped a wool scarf around her neck. Lily clutched her cloth doll, her eyes shining. Tom stood at her side, body quivering not from cold but from readiness. The soldier opened the door. Freezing wind slashed their faces, an endless white stretching beyond. He pulled his collar-high rifle slung across his shoulder, one hand gripping his daughter's small fingers. Tom stepped ahead, pressing into the snow, leaving clear tracks as a guide. A soldier, a disabled little girl, and a dog, they had become a small unit. No one knew what awaited in the deep woods, but all understood this journey could no longer be delayed. The soldier looked at his daughter, then at Tom, and whispered, "All right, lead the way, boy." And so they stepped out of the cabin, their small figures etched into the boundless snow, heading straight toward the secret waiting in the northern forest. The wind screamed through the ice-crusted pines like the howls of 1,000 lost souls. The storm had passed, but the cold that lingered cut like a knife biting deep into flesh. Snow was so thick that every step the soldier took sank nearly to his calves. He pulled his collar high, his calloused hand gripping Lily's as he guided her stumbling steps. Her prosthetic leg struck out a steady clack-clack, blending with the crunch of shattered snow beneath their feet. Tom led the way. Though his wounds were not fully healed, his stance was firm. His stride, deliberate ears pointed sharply forward. He surged ahead like a silver-black arrow across the snowy sea, leaving behind a trail of even footprints to guide them. Lily panted, breath coming hard, but she never let go of her father's hand. Each time she faltered, she squeezed the cloth doll in her pocket as if it were a charm against the cold. The soldier glanced down at her, his heart tightening. Then he lifted her up, strong arms encircling her small frame, letting her weary legs rest. "Daddy," she whispered, cheek pressed to his shoulder, her breath drifting in pale white clouds. The girl raised her eyes to the dog striding ahead. Tom never looked back, yet somehow he seemed to know whether they were keeping pace. Each time the soldier paused, Tom would stop too, turning his head, amber eyes glowing faintly in the white haze. Midway through the journey, they came upon a frozen stream. Patches of ice gleamed between dark cracks that cut like veins across its surface. The soldier set Lily down, steadied his rifle, and tested the ice step by step. He slammed the butt of the gun down, each hollow thud rang with suspicion. He turned back, scooped Lily up, and carried her across in short, tense strides, sweat beading beneath his heavy coat. Tom bounded over in a few sure leaps, waiting on the far side, never taking his eyes off them. Once safe, Lily burrowed into her father's chest, trembling. "Daddy, Tom is like a real soldier." The man froze. Those simple words cut into him like a blade. He stared at the dog's back, weighted by memory. His comrades had once been the same, walking ahead, clearing the path, leaving footprints for him to follow, only to fall in the snow. He swallowed hard, stroked his daughter's head. "Yes, sweetheart. You're right." They rested beneath a massive pine whose roots clawed up from the ground like talons. The soldier built a small fire. Flames crackled smoke slipping thinly into the thick canopy above. He handed Lily a piece of dried rations. She nibbled tiny bites, then shyly broke off a bit and offered it to Tom. The dog took it, chewing slowly, but his gaze never wavered from the north where the snow swallowed every trace of life. Noon faded into afternoon. The sky pressed low and gray clouds thickening like a stone blanket. Wind lashed their faces raw, painting Lily's cheeks crimson. The soldier wrapped her head tight in a scarf, then carried her again when the prosthetic gave out. The trail grew harsher. At times they scaled icy slopes so slick that a single misstep meant tumbling into the snowy abyss below. The soldier gritted his teeth each step, tearing at his muscles, but he never loosened his grip on his daughter. Tom clawed grooves into the ice ahead, carving footholds for him to follow. For a fleeting instant, another vision pierced the present, a comrade collapsing before him, blood-staining white snow eyes wide and fixed on him as if to say, "Keep going. Don't stop." The soldier shuddered, clenched his jaw, and pressed on. By late afternoon, the last light bled away behind the distant peaks. The breath of the three travelers billowed together in ghostly clouds, dissolving into the swirling snow. The soldier felt as though he could not take another step. But whenever he faltered, Tom stopped, turned, and whined softly. His eyes glowed like a hidden lantern in the night. There was a power in that gaze, an unspoken force, driving the soldier to bite down and keep moving. Then suddenly, Tom froze. His fur bristled, a growl rumbling low in his chest. The soldier set Lily down and raised his rifle. The forest loomed, silent wind, rattling through the branches, nothing but darkness. And then he saw it. A thin column of smoke silver gray rising from the heart of the woods. "Daddy!" "Someone's out there," Lily whispered, eyes wide in awe. The soldier tightened his grip on the rifle. In memory, smoke could mean a saving fire or a deadly lure before an ambush. Every sense sharpened his heart, pounding. Tom hesitated not at all. He gave a sharp whine, turned to his master with urgent eyes, then pressed forward paws, setting firm tracks straight toward the smoke. The soldier drew a long breath, pulling his daughter close, feeling her tiny heartbeat hammering against him. In his mind, the instincts of a soldier and the intuition of a father blended into one. Ahead lay a crossroads of fate. Night fell. Three small figures etched themselves into the endless white, trudging toward that slender column of smoke, at once a sign of life and a warning of danger. The thin column of smoke finally led them to a clearing deep in the forest. The snow here was stamped with uneven depressions, clear signs that people had passed through. After nearly an hour of trudging through the woods, the soldier halted, his breath pounding like hammers against his chest. His whole body felt on the verge of collapse. He set Lily down against the trunk of a pine, then narrowed his eyes toward what lay ahead. At the edge of the clearing, among the gray trunks, a wooden shack appeared. It was dilapidated, its roof sagging, its planks warped and peeling. Gaps in the walls whistled with the wind, moaning like voices in lament. Yet from the crooked chimney, smoke still curled upward, a clear sign someone was inside. "Daddy." "Whose house is that?" Lily trembled, her small hand clutching his coat. He did not answer. Every muscle in his body went taut, strung tight by a soldier's instinct. A solitary shack in the middle of the woods, smoke rising in the dead of winter. Far too many things didn't add up. Tom growled low and heavy like thunder in his chest. The hackles on his back bristled. Then suddenly, he shot forward, barking furiously, his voice booming across the trees. Reaching the shack, he clawed savagely at the door, gouging deep lines into the rotting wood. Blood seeped from his paws, but he didn't stop. His teeth bared, amber eyes blazing with fury. The soldier moved forward, rifle at the ready, eyes sweeping the perimeter. No sign of an ambush. But as he drew close to the door, he froze. A massive iron lock, rusted but still solid, clamped tight over a chain wrapped around the handle. The door was secured from the outside. A chill shot down his spine. In war, he had seen makeshift tents padlocked to hold prisoners young soldiers left inside like refuse. The memory surged back, constricting his chest. Lily clutched her doll, her eyes wide with fear. "Daddy! Is someone inside? Locked in?" He gritted his teeth, glanced at Tom. The dog was clawing until his paws bled, barking without pause. There was no doubt something alive was trapped inside. The soldier dropped his pack, pulled out his hunting knife, and tried to pry at the lock. The metal was ice-cold, corroded, but unyielding. He shifted angles, wedged harder. Nothing. His breath came in thick plumes, sweat beating at his temples despite the biting wind. A growl rumbled in his chest. There was no other way. He gripped his rifle, stock raised it, and brought it down hard against the lock. Clang. The crack of metal rang out, echoing through the forest like a gunshot. The lock shuddered but held. Pain shot through his shoulder. He clenched his teeth and struck again. The blow reverberated, the steel groaning, a small fracture splitting across the lock's body. The ache spread down his arm, but he did not stop. A third strike chain screamed, then snapped apart. The lock flew into the snow, leaving behind a dark smear of oil. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow gap of pitch black. At once, a foul stench rushed out, choking. The air-damp rot that clawed at the lungs mingled with the sour reek of rust and unwashed flesh. Lily clamped her nose, eyes brimming with tears. "Daddy, I'm scared." He gripped her hand tight, whispering, "Hold on to me. You'll be all right." Tom didn't wait. He pushed through the gap, first claws clicking against the rotten boards, barking ferociously into the dark. The soldier snapped on his flashlight, pulled his daughter close to his chest, and shoved the door open wider. Rusted hinges screeched, piercing the silence. The shack loomed like a giant coffin, swallowing light and breath alike. He stepped inside. Rifle raised flashlight sweeping the main room. The place was a wreck, broken furniture, rusted pots, piles of discarded clothing. The damp stench smothered even the faint tang of old gunpowder still lingering in the air. But Tom didn't stop there. He tore straight toward a small back room, his barking turning into furious howls. The soldier's heart pounded wildly. He pressed Lily close, moving step by step. Each creak of the rotted floor stretched long and hollow, like bones snapping in the dark. At the last door, the flashlight beam cut across, and there it was. Tom stood braced on a rusted iron bed frame, barking madly. His amber eyes blazed, fixed on the shadowed corner of the room. Something or someone was inside that small back chamber. The back room of the shack was so dark that even the flashlight beam seemed swallowed whole. The soldier stepped in first. Lily pressed tightly against his chest rifle, raised and ready. His heart pounded hard, every sense screaming in alarm. Tom stood braced on a rusted iron bed, growling claws scraping against the frame. The light swept across and all three froze. A woman lay there. Her tangled silver hair hung like a dusty veil, her gaunt face little more than skin stretched over bone. Her lips were cracked, bluish, trembling with shallow breaths. Her left wrist was locked in a thick iron shackle, the chain fastened to the bed frame. Beneath the cuff, her skin was raw, mottled with dried blood, crisscrossed with old and new cuts, the marks of long captivity. "Dear God," the soldier whispered, voice tightening. Lily recoiled, her small arms clutching her father's neck, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Daddy, is she alive?" He set her gently onto a rolled blanket in the corner, murmuring, "Stay right here. Don't take your eyes off me." He knelt by the bed, his calloused fingers finding her frail wrist. A pulse, weak, fragile as a thread, but there. A sigh of relief escaped him, mingled with a surge of fury. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he whispered, shaking her shoulder gently. Her eyelids fluttered, opening just a slit. Her eyes were cloudy, lost. Her dry lips moved, no sound coming. Tom whimpered, pressing his muzzle against her frozen hand as if to share his warmth. The soldier pulled out a folding knife, wedged the steel point into the lock. The metal shrieked stubborn. His hand trembled not from cold, but from rage. A sharp snap echoed. The shackle sprang free. He massaged her wrist, coaxing blood back into the skin, red blotches slowly spreading. Lily limped closer, clutching her doll, her hand gripping her father's voice trembling. "Daddy." She looks like she's sleeping, but she's so cold. "I know, sweetheart," he said, voice low. "We're going to save her." He opened his pack, pulled out an emergency mylar blanket. The crinkle of foil filled the damp room. He wrapped her frail body in its silver cocoon, then unscrewed a canteen, poured a few drops into a tin cup lid, and lifted her head. "Just a sip," he coaxed. Her cracked lips parted. Water slid in her throat, convulsed. A rasping sound escaped, half moan, half breath. Lily's voice caught. She's coming back, isn't she, Daddy?" The soldier nodded, but he knew only for now. Without proper care, soon this fragile life would fade. He carried her to the main room, laying her on a broken bench near the fireplace. Ashes coated the hearth, but he gathered the last scraps of dry wood and lit a fire. Flames flickered their orange glow, revealing every wound, every line of suffering, the heavy stench of sickness rising thick in the air. Tom lay pressed at her side, eyes unblinking. Lily curled inside her father's coat, her face pale but trying to be brave. The soldier's gaze swept the room, a rickety table, moldy cans, and half hidden under a filthy rag, a leather-bound book. He pulled it free, brushed away dust, opened its pages. The damp cover warped, but the shaky writing remained clear. Day 1. "Dylan brought me here, said it was a retreat. Told me to stay away from the city for a while. I believed him." He turned the page. Day 5. "Dylan locked the door. He said he knew about the land. He needed the papers. He said I owed him." His jaw clenched. Another page. Day 9. "He brought me scraps of bread, a little water, just enough to live. He enjoyed watching me weaken. Lucy, my brave boy, always stood in front of me." Dylan kicked him. I heard his pitiful cry and then silence. He dragged Lucy away. I prayed he lived. The soldier gripped the journal tight, blood pounding in his temples. He glanced at Tom, now pressing his muzzle against his mistress's hand, eyes glistening. The truth was undeniable. Tom had returned, leading them here. In that instant, the pieces snapped together in Michael's mind. Tom was Lucy. The dog shivered faintly, ears drooping as if confessing. He had come back, guiding them here, refusing to let the truth be buried beneath the snow. He turned another page. Day 12. "He shoved papers at me, demanded I sign. I refused. He threatened to leave me here to die. I know he means it, but I will not yield. This is my family's inheritance. Even if I die, I will not sign." Gently, Michael closed the journal. The full darkness of the story lay open. A desperate man named Dylan, driven by greed and debt, had tortured his own blood for a piece of paper. Michael looked around the journal, stained with sweat and blood, the frail body lying motionless, the loyal dog never leaving her side. In the firelight, the truth seared him. Compared to them, his years of hiding in solitude had been a selfish indulgence. His war had ended, but theirs was still raging. And now, he was part of it. In the dim shack, the flames cast their shadows across the walls. A soldier, a little girl, and a dog guarding a fragile soul just freed from chains. Outside, the wind shrieked through the pines like the darkness being torn apart, making room for the flicker of hope rising within. Michael closed his eyes, drawing in a long breath. His mission was no longer escape, no longer forgetting. Now there was only one mission left. Protection. He would be the wall between them and the monster still lurking in the deep woods. Night had sunk deep into the Montana wilderness. The wind howled outside, tearing through the dark pines, while inside the shack, the fire in the hearth flickered weakly, casting only a dim orange glow. The soldier sat in a sagging chair, rifle laid across his lap, eyes unblinking. Lily leaned against his arm, her breathing steady but shallow sleep fitful, broken each time the wind screamed through the wooden walls. Tom lay at the door, head resting on his paws, but his ears stood straight, body tense like a coiled spring. The silence was torn by a faint sound crunch, snow compressed beneath a footstep. Tom shot up, growling low. The soldier straightened, hand gripping his rifle. He signaled Lily to stay quiet, his broad palm steadying her small shoulder. The scrape of a key in the lock. The door creaked open, a gust of icy wind sweeping in with the damp smell of the forest. A figure stepped inside, shaking the snow from his boots. He dropped a heavy sack to the floor with a thud. His voice was harsh, dripping with disdain. "Wake up, old hag. I brought you a fine supper tonight." It was Dylan, a young man barely past 20, his face still boyish, but his eyes sharp and lifeless, like a dull knife turned cruel. An expensive fur coat draped over his frame, clashing with worn boots and tattered jeans. But when he looked up, he froze. The bed was empty. The fire was burning. And in the shadows stood a stranger rifle leveled squarely at his chest. Who are you?" Dylan stammered, his voice cracking, eyes darting. But before Michael could answer, Dylan's gaze dropped to the floor. He went pale. Tom stood there, amber eyes blazing, teeth bared. "No," Dylan staggered back, face drained. "No, it can't be. I killed you." Tom's growl roared through the room. He lunged forward, claws clattering against the boards. Dylan screamed, raising his arms instinctively. Michael stepped forward, voice deep, iron hard. "It's over, Dylan." But Dylan wouldn't yield. Fear twisted into frenzy. He lunged like a cornered beast. Michael swung the rifle, driving the stock into his chest, shoving him back against the splintered wall. Tom snarled, ready to strike. Daddy Lily cried, her voice shaking. She stumbled to her feet, clutching her doll to her chest, eyes wide with terror. In the struggle, Dylan flailed wildly, his arms smashing into the rickety table. The oil lamp teetered, then toppled. For an instant, time froze. Then crash glass shattered, oil spread across the floor. Flames erupted. Fire licked up the boards, racing like a venomous snake. In seconds, the shack became an inferno. Michael coughed hard, yanked the rifle to shove Dylan back, then lunged for the bed, scooping the frail woman into his arms. She weighed no more than a shadow, her breath a faint thread. "Lily, stay with me," he shouted. The little girl hobbled forward as fast as she could, eyes wide with smoke and fear. Tom barked furiously, circling to guard them, shielding them from falling sparks. Flames devoured the walls. Black smoke rolled upward, choking their lungs. Michael bent low, one arm carrying the woman, the other pulling Lily close. The front door was already a wall of fire. "Now, Tom," he rasped. The dog hurled himself at the door, slamming hard. Hinges screamed, wood splintered, and the door burst open. Cold wind rushed in, dragging smoke and fire with it. Michael staggered outside, boots sinking into the snow, lungs seared from the smoke. Lily stumbled after him, cheeks flushed, tears streaking her face. Tom darted around them, barking madly, driving them farther from the blaze. Behind them, the shack bellowed like a dying beast, flames consuming it, whole sparks clawing at the night sky. Michael dropped to his knees in the snow, gently laying the woman down on his coat. Her skin was ashen, her breathing ragged but still alive. Lily fell beside her, clutching her icy hand, whispering through trembling lips, "Please, please wake up. Grandma, please." Tom stood guard at the front, fur bristling, eyes locked on the fiery doorway, barking in short, urgent bursts. He knew the danger wasn't over, and it wasn't. From the blaze staggered a figure. Dylan. His coat smoked his hair, singed his face, blotched with burns. He coughed, collapsing to the snow, slapping at sparks still clinging to him. Damn it, he rasped, eyes darting, still full of venom. Michael gripped his rifle tight, stepping in front of Lily and the woman. Tom crouched low, growling, ready to leap. "Stop, Dylan." Michael barked, his voice carrying over the storm. "It's finished." "No," Dylan screamed, charging like a rabid animal. Tom sprang, muscles surging, slamming into the man who had once tormented him. Dylan crashed into the snow, shrieking, his teeth and claws pressed close. Michael surged forward, driving his shoulder and pinning Dylan against a tree, the rifle stock crushing his chest. They grappled, breath ragged, the crackle of burning wood behind them like a funeral bell. "You don't understand," Dylan howled, face twisted. "I need those papers. They're worth a fortune. And what about her?" Michael roared, fury burning. "You chained her, starved her, tortured her for a few scraps of paper." For a moment, Dylan's eyes faltered, but then they flashed with cunning. He swung wildly, a clumsy punch. Michael jerked aside the blow, glancing off, but Dylan's other hand snatched a charred branch, swinging it back. Flames flared inches from Michael's face. He reeled back instinctively. In that instant, Dylan tore free, staggering into the woods. "Daddy!" Lily cried out. Michael raised his rifle sight, trained on the stumbling figure. His finger tightened on the trigger, then stopped. In the flickering firelight, Dylan was no villain now, only a broken boy swallowed by hate and greed. "Let him go." Michael exhaled, lowering the gun. Tom barked, eager to give chase, but Michael's hand pressed firm on his back. "Stay." They turned back to the woman, her face touched by the mylar blanket's warmth, and the snow beneath flushed faintly with color. Lily pressed her cheek to the woman's hand, smiling through tears. "Daddy, she's still alive." Michael nodded, hard eyes burning with resolve. They had survived one battle, but the road ahead was long. The shack was ash, the forest pressed dark and endless around them, and the villain still roamed somewhere in the night. But as he looked at his daughter clutching the woman's hand, and at the faithful dog standing guard, he knew he was not alone. They were a unit, an unlikely family bound together by trial and fire. The flames from the shack raged skyward, staining the night red. But in that firelight, Michael saw a truth. The war inside him had found new purpose, not escape, not forgetting, protection. He tightened his grip on the rifle, lifted his head toward the woods where Dylan had vanished, then bent low, shielding his daughter and the woman. From now on, no one will ever harm them again. The vow rang firm, unshaken into the merciless Montana night. A timid dawn crept across the forest, blanketed in ash. After the night's inferno, the white snow was scarred by black streaks of soot. The air was heavy with the stench of scorched wood, rusting iron, and kerosene lingering like smoke in the lungs. An eerie silence lay over everything, as though even the forest itself held its breath in mourning for what had been destroyed. Michael stood motionless in the clearing. His breath rose in thick white clouds, his broad shoulders heavy. Before him, the shack that had imprisoned an innocent woman was nothing but a heap of blackened ruins, half-burned posts jutting upward like crude gravestones. He felt as if he had walked off a battlefield, not one filled with gunfire, but one where destruction still gnawed silently at his mind. Beside him, Lily pressed close. The wool scarf around her neck couldn't hide her flushed face, red from the cold. Her clear blue eyes brimmed with tears fixed on the ruins. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Daddy, the house is gone." Michael bent down, his calloused hand smoothing her tangled golden hair. His voice rasped. It wasn't a house, sweetheart. It was a prison. And now, it's gone. Tom prowled around the ashes, tense and alert. His ears stood tall and his nose twitching at the acrid air. Suddenly, he froze, growling low. He clawed furiously at one corner of the ashes, scattering cinders in a smoky haze. Michael dropped to his knees at once. He pulled out his hunting knife, scraping away the smoldering ash. Red embers hissed and spat smoke, stinging his eyes. Beneath the black crust, a glint of silver appeared. "What is it, Daddy? What did Tom find?" Lily gasped, voice quivering with anticipation. Michael pulled free a metal box, warped and scorched at the edges, but the latch still intact. It was cold and heavy in his hands. Wrapping it in cloth, he forced it open with a sharp snap. Inside lay a thick bundle of papers, their edges charred, many pages blackened with smoke, but the center intact. Michael flipped through quickly. Loan contracts, deeds, forged signatures, Dylan's name scrawled over and over. His jaw tightened, blood pounding at his temples. And then from the bottom, a single brittle sheet slipped free. Yellowed with age, its edges singed, but the words still clear: certificate of land ownership. Owners Eleanor Whitmore, Samuel Cole. Michael froze, his eyes widened, fingers trembling as they traced the familiar name, Samuel Cole, his grandfather, the man who had fallen in war, leaving only broken fragments of memory for his son. His whole body stiffened. Michael's throat clenched. Memories of his grandfather, half real, half legend in his father's stories, surged back. A bond invisible, yet undeniable, connected him to the frail woman clinging to life. Behind him, a hoarse whisper rasped through the smoke. Samuel. Yes, it was him. Michael and Lily spun around. The elderly woman lay on the thick coat, her face gaunt, lips cracked, eyes dim but faintly open. She trembled, each word breaking on her breath. "I was once his fiancée. The war stole him from me. I waited and had to let go. Those papers, they are proof." Tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks. Tom whimpered, pressing his muzzle to her icy hand, licking fiercely as if to give warmth back. Lily broke into sobs, dropping to her knees, clutching the woman's hand to her cheek. "Grandma, are you truly part of our family?" The woman gave a faint nod, a fragile smile flickering through her pain. Her voice shook as she went on. "I never signed. Dylan wanted the land, but this is the heritage of our family." Michael went still. He gripped the paper tight, his eyes blazing. This was no longer just a story of captivity, it was the attempted theft of his family's legacy. The woman, Eleanor Whitmore, was bloodkin he had never known. Quickly, he wrapped her again in the mylar blanket, dripping water carefully onto her cracked lips. "You have to hold on. We'll get you out of here." "We'll." She shook her head weakly, her voice fading. "There are others. Dylan won't stop." Her eyes fluttered closed, her breath thinning. Michael held her tighter, his chest aching. Lily pressed against her side, sobbing. "Don't leave us. Tom brought us back. We're a family now." Tom barked sharply as if in promise. Michael rose, shoving the bundle of papers into a waterproof pouch. His eyes followed the trail of footprints stretching north across the snow, the path Dylan had taken when he fled. He clenched his teeth, his voice ringing firm, carved into the frozen morning. "We're not finished yet." Sunlight broke across the forest, spilling over 3 small figures, a battle-worn veteran, a disabled child, and a loyal dog huddled close around a fragile soul. Ahead of them, danger still lay waiting. But now they fought for more than survival. They fought for truth, for inheritance, and for family. The sky hung heavy gray as molten lead pressing down over the Montana forest. Breath froze into white plumes, each step sinking deep into soft snow. Michael led the way, eyes locked on the erratic trail ahead. The footprints twisted and staggered, uneven in length, spattered with fresh blood. "He's wearing out," Michael muttered, tightening his grip on the rifle strap. Behind him, Lily limped along her prosthetic leg, striking a steady clack-clack. She bit her lip but uttered no complaint. Her small hand clung to her father's, the other clutching her worn cloth doll. Tom ran at their side, strong and vigilant ears, pricked nose, pulling in the scents of blood and lingering gunpowder drifting in the wind. Suddenly, Tom growled and leapt forward. Michael yanked Lily aside just as a thick rope snapped down, slamming into the space they'd been walking. A crude hanging snare, clumsy but deadly enough. Michael's heart jolted. He pulled Lily close, eyes blazing. He's desperate now. That makes him more dangerous than ever. Lily trembled but lifted her chin, whispering, "Tom is smarter than him. We won't fall into his traps." Michael glanced at the dog. Tom's amber eyes glowed sharp with vigilance. He nodded, voice gravelly. "Yes, Tom is our eyes." They pressed on. Tom stopped at suspicious trees, sniffing carefully before signaling the way clear. Michael's mind flickered with memories of war. How many times his life had been spared by a comrade's eyes. Now that comrade was a dog, no less loyal, no less brave. By midday, they paused beside a frozen stream. Michael bent to wash his face in the icy water, shaking off fatigue. Tom prowled the banks, then barked sharply. He dug furiously, scattering snow, and unearthed a small canvas pouch. Michael opened it. Inside was a scorched bundle of papers scribbled with jagged handwriting. Names filled the pages, Dylan's, and many more, along with numbers and cryptic location codes. Michael's fist clenched. Dear God, this is a whole network. He wasn't acting alone. Lily shivered. Does that mean there are more bad people, Daddy? He nodded, voice hard as iron. And this evidence will expose them all. He shoved the papers into his inner coat, gripped the rifle strap tighter. Determination pressed heavy in his chest like stone. By late afternoon, faint light filtered through the trees. The footprints ahead sank deeper, the bloodstains spreading wider. Dylan was failing. Tom suddenly froze, growling low. Michael crouched, holding his breath. Through the dense trees, a thin silver thread of smoke rose. Nestled in a ravine was a makeshift hut, its walls patched with broken boards, a bent stovepipe leaking weak smoke. Michael signaled Lily and Tom to stay low. His pulse thundered ears, straining to catch every sound. Dylan was there, the cornered animal hiding. He bent close to Lily, whispering, "You must stay very quiet." "I'll handle this." She nodded, eyes wide, clutching her doll tight. Tom pressed low into the snow lips, curled, breath heaving. Michael crept forward, each step measured, as careful as crossing a minefield. Then he heard it, the rasp of coughing, the frantic rustle of hands stuffing belongings into a bag. Dylan was getting ready to run. Michael gave the signal. Tom burst forward, barking thunderously. Michael sprang up, rifle raised. Dylan stumbled out of the hut, filthy clothes shredded, blood soaking his sleeve. His eyes flared with madness when they met Michael's. "Stay where you are." Michael roared, rifle sight locked. Dylan shrieked hoarsely, "That land is mine." The old woman had to die. He flailed, wrenching a knife from his belt, but Tom lunged, jaws clamping onto his arm. Dylan screamed, crashing into the snow. Michael surged forward, kicked the knife away, and pressed the rifle muzzle hard against his brow. For a breathless instant, silence. Then, Michael lifted the rifle skyward and fired 3 sharp shots. Bang, bang, bang. The cracks echoed across the forest like war drums. The Marine signal, 3 crisp bursts, unmistakable. Silence held, then faintly an engine's growl. Lights flickered through the swirling snow. Daddy Lily cried, eyes shining. "Someone's coming!" Snowmobiles roared into view, headlights cutting through the storm. Sheriff Brody, a towering man with a bristled beard and cold eyes, rode at the front, a young deputy gripping his weapon behind him. Michael Cole. Brody, thundered, eyes narrowing at the scene. "That signal. Was it you?" Michael nodded sharply, pinning Dylan into the snow. "He imprisoned Eleanor. This is your man. And inside, you'll find the proof." Brody strode over, wrenched Dylan's arms behind him, clapped on cold steel cuffs. The deputy rifled the hut, dragging out sacks of moldy food, cans of fuel, and the stuffed papers. The whir of blades cut through the distance. Snow whipped up as a red and white medical helicopter descended, searchlight flooding the clearing. Paramedics sprinted out quickly, lifting Eleanor onto a stretcher, felines and blankets wrapping her frail body. Lily ran beside, clutching her hand, tears streaming. "Grandma, you'll be safe now." Michael lifted his daughter into his arms, holding her close. His hardened heart trembled as her tiny heartbeat pressed against his chest. Tom stood firm beside them, amber eyes fixed on the stretcher body, solid as a shield. The helicopter lifted, roaring snow swirling in blinding gusts. The icy wind lashed their faces, but its golden beams shone like a beacon through the winter forest. Michael gazed up, memory-shadowed eyes lit with a rare spark. Lily buried her face against his neck, whispering, "Daddy, I believe we'll be all right." He held her tighter, nodding. Tom sat at their side, ears sharp, eyes resolute, watching the light fade into the sky. Through the endless Montana night, the helicopter dwindled, swallowed into the heavens. But within Michael, Lily, and Tom, a fire had ignited. A new journey had begun, one of justice and reunion. And this time, they were no longer alone. The faint smell of antiseptic lingered in the long white hallway under the harsh glow of neon lights. Bozeman Hospital blazed bright through the night, the hurried footsteps of doctors echoing sharply across the tiled floor. In the recovery room, Eleanor lay still, her frail body wrapped in white sheets, her hollow cheeks touched with a faint flush of pink from oxygen and IV fluids. Michael sat beside the bed, his calloused hands clasping her wrinkled ones. Lily sat on the opposite side, her head resting gently against the woman's hand, blue eyes shimmering with tears. Tom lay at the foot of the bed, his head on his front paws, amber eyes wide open, watchful yet tender. After days hovering on the edge of death, Eleanor's eyelids trembled. Her breath rasped, and then her cracked lips parted. "Samuel, I thought I would never see you again." Michael tightened his grip, his voice low and hoarse. "He's gone, lost to the war." But I'm his grandson." Her clouded eyes brightened faintly, filling with tears. Eleanor's body shook, her words breaking with emotion. "I waited. All my life, Samuel promised he'd return. But the war stole everything. I kept that land, as if I were keeping the promise we never finished." Michael bowed his head, his father's stories flooding back. His grandfather, Samuel Cole, had once known a great love before marching off to war. Now the truth was clear: the woman before him was that love, and the family he had never known. Lily blinked, her small voice faltering. "So, she really is our family?" Eleanor's lips curved in a faint smile as she nodded. Tears traced down her lined face. Michael leaned in, embracing both her and his daughter. A piece of their family lost for decades had finally been found. Weeks later, when Eleanor's strength returned, the three of them brought her back to Montana. The wooden cabin, once swallowed by loneliness in the pines, was no longer a place of exile. The fireplace roared warmly, flames painting the walls with flickering amber light, reflecting faces now lit with joy. On the table lay the bundle of inheritance papers, sealed neatly in a plastic case. Michael and Eleanor had reached an agreement: they would keep the land but never let greed consume it. Instead, they created a small trust from the mineral rights, naming it Samuel's Promise, to aid lost veterans and fund shelters for stray dogs. Samuel always wanted to protect his brothers in arms, Eleanor whispered, eyes glistening. "Now you and I will carry that forward." Michael nodded, his gaze a blend of steel and rare gentleness. He saw in this not just justice, but the mending of broken family ties. When the snow melted, Lily practiced walking around the porch. Michael stayed close, his steady hand supporting her as the prosthetic tapped rhythmically across the boards. Eleanor rocked gently in her chair, her old hands holding a small flower pot. Slowly, Lily, she called, her voice warm with a grandmother's smile. "You're walking stronger than yesterday." The child laughed, her golden hair shimmering in the spring sunlight. Holding tightly to her father's hand, she cried out like a song, "I'll plant flowers here, all around the porch, so summer will smell like the fairy tales." Michael chuckled softly, pulling her into his arms. Peace washed over him, a peace he had not known in years of war and loss. Tom sprawled under the porch, head on his paws, amber eyes half shut. Yet at the faintest sound, his ears pricked, his body ready to rise, ever the faithful sentinel. Eleanor watched the scene before her: the battle-scarred man, the little girl who shone like sunlight despite her missing limb, the dog who had nearly died in the snow, all now gathered close, bound as one. She whispered, voice trembling but full of joy. This is what home truly means." Michael lifted his gaze, dark blue eyes glowing beneath the Montana sky. He knew the mountains, once a prison of solitude, had become a haven of reunion. No more chains, no more fear, only the warmth of family. As evening fell, the crimson sun sank behind the snowy peaks. The cabin's shadows stretched long, enfolding those who had finally found each other after so much loss. Years later, spring returned to Montana. Snowmelt tumbled into clear streams, and young grass rolled green over the hills. The cabin gleamed restored and sturdy, its porch bright with the flowers Lily had planted with her small hands. Now, 10 years old, Lily's thin frame had grown, her blue eyes radiant. She ran slowly across the yard with her new prosthetic, stronger and steadier arms outstretched as if to embrace the sky. Her laughter rang through the pines, filling the once lonely land with life. Tom had grown old, his coat mottled with silver, his steps slower. Yet his amber eyes still shone with loyalty. He rested beneath the porch tail, twitching gently, ears tuned to Lily's laughter, still guarding his home. Michael sat on the step, streaks of gray in his hair, his weathered face calm at last. He held a newspaper in his hands, an article about Samuel's Promise, which had already aided dozens of veterans and funded dog rescues across Montana. He folded the page, glanced toward Lily, and smiled faintly. Eleanor sat rocking, a thin shawl draped over her shoulders, her aged eyes glowing with joy. Watching her descendants play, she whispered as though to Samuel, "Do you see they've kept your promise?" At dusk, the family gathered around the fire. Flames glowed orange across tired but content faces. Michael held Lily in his arms, Tom rested his head against his leg, and Eleanor softly sang an old lullaby. The Montana mountains still stood tall, snow still fell each winter, but loneliness was gone. In the wilderness, a family had been found again, raising a home from ash and memory, and the promise of long ago had become new life, forever carried in the hearts of those who remained. In this story, a veteran who thought he had lost every reason to live discovered a new mission when he chose to protect his daughter, a frail woman, and a loyal dog. Michael came to see that strength isn't found in fleeing from pain, but in facing it to defend the fragile lives entrusted to us. Lily with her pure heart, Tom with his undying loyalty, and Eleanor with her unbroken will all showed him that family isn't only blood. Family is whoever stands guard against the darkness for one another. Perhaps that is the message for us too, to listen to believe and to find the courage to protect. For even the smallest act can kindle hope in another soul.